her boyfriend.
Yeah, court documents lay out a disturbing series of events inside an apartment in Baytown. Investigators say a woman killed her boyfriend, then cut up his body last month. Deputies tracked her down in Louisiana outside New Orleans. Janelle Bluda has the story.
How did we not hear anything?
An eerie silence has fallen over this Baytown apartment complex as neighbors slowly learn what happened just a few doors down. Inside court documents, the story is told.
It's crazy, it's scary.
Mickey Rogers has confirmed this is her neighbor, Cierra Sutton, and her boyfriend, Stephen Coleman. He went missing in August.
She acted like she knew nothing about anything. She was trying to call him. She hadn't heard from him. No response.
But investigators believe Sutton knew something all along.
She wasn't who she tried to play off being.
They say after an argument, Sutton shot Coleman in the head while he was sleeping, and her 10-year-old daughter was in the living room. Then she dismembered his body with a machete, putting his remains in multiple nearby dumpsters.
I walk to that dumpster right there every day.
The trash from these dumpsters is eventually taken to the Baytown landfill. It was there where investigators say Coleman's remains were eventually found.
Stephen Coleman did not just disappear. That is what makes this story so disturbing. Before the world ever heard the gruesome details, before the landfill, before the arrest, before the courtroom, Stephen had already warned people close to him about the woman living inside his apartment. His girlfriend, Cierra Sutton. People around Stephen said he wanted out of the relationship. They said things inside that apartment had become toxic, unstable, and dangerous. And at some point, Stephen allegedly told his friends something that now sounds chilling. If anything ever happened to him, they should look at Cierra first. Then Stephen vanished. But the person who walked into the police station acting like the worried girlfriend was Cierra herself. She reported him missing. She told police he had left the apartment and never came back. She acted like she was searching for answers. But investigators would later say the truth was already inside the trash system. Stephen had been killed inside the apartment he shared with her. His body had been cut apart. His remains had been placed into dumpsters. And those dumpsters were carried to a landfill. So the question is not just what happened to Stephen Coleman. The question is darker than that. How does a woman report her boyfriend missing when police say she already knew exactly where he was? Before we go deeper, subscribe to Crime Scene Exposed for real stories where love, control, jealousy, secrets, and betrayal turn deadly. Because this case is not only about a murder. It is about a relationship that people around them already feared, a man who reportedly tried to leave, a girlfriend who allegedly refused to let go, and a missing person report that may have been part of the performance.
Friends say the innocent girlfriend act went away after the torso was discovered when she left town. This is where it happened, this Baytown apartment complex. It was right inside there where Stephen Coleman was killed, shot in the head, and body so heavy that he was chopped into pieces and thrown in the dumpster. Tonight, his girlfriend is behind bars, a gruesome situation, leaving his friends and family speechless.
Stephen Coleman was 32 years old. In the Houston area music scene, many people knew him as Slim to Don. He was connected to independent rap, and he had roots that reached beyond Texas. People later linked him to New Orleans East, and that matters because Stephen was not just some unknown man in a headline. He had a name. He had a voice. He had people who knew his music. He had people who saw him trying to build something for himself. He was not famous on a massive level, but he had presence. He had an identity. And that identity made the case even more painful because the man some people knew as Slim to Don was still privately vulnerable to the same kind of dangerous relationship that can trap anybody. The apartment at Briarwood Village in Baytown was supposed to be his space, his place, a sign that he was building something stable. People close to him understood how much having his own apartment meant. It was not about showing off. It was about independence, a key, a lease, a place where he could work, rest, write, make music, and live his life without depending on anyone else. Then Cierra Sutton came into that space. And from the way the story has been described, she did not enter his life as someone obviously dangerous. She was about 30 years old. She worked as a veterinary technician. She had a young daughter. She was described by some people as someone who did not look like a killer. That is what people always say after a case like this. She looked normal. She was pretty. She seemed calm. You would never think she could do something like that. But that is exactly why appearances are dangerous. A person does not need to look violent to become violent. A person does not need to scream in public to be controlling in private. And a relationship does not need to look like a nightmare from the outside to become one behind closed doors. Cierra reportedly told Stephen she was having family problems and had nowhere to go. So Stephen let her move in. That one decision changed everything, because the apartment that had once represented progress for Stephen became the place where his life ended. And that is the first betrayal in the story. He opened his door to her. She later walked into police and reported him missing. But people around Stephen had already started seeing signs that the relationship was not right. Friends described it as a love-hate relationship. And that phrase sounds small until you really think about it. Love-hate is what people say when they do not want to call a relationship dangerous. Love-hate is what friends say when two people fight constantly but keep going back. Love-hate is what neighbors see when arguments spill outside, then the couple acts normal again the next day. It sounds like drama, but sometimes drama is just danger before people are ready to name it. Stephen's friends believed he wanted to end things. They believed he wanted Cierra out. And that is where the story becomes bigger than a bad relationship. Because when one person wants out and the other person refuses to accept it, the relationship stops being about love. It becomes about control. It becomes about ego. It becomes about ownership. And if the reports from Stephen's friends are true, he understood that something was seriously wrong. He allegedly told people that if he ever went missing, Cierra was the one they should look at. That is not normal relationship talk. That is not, we had an argument. That is not, my girlfriend is annoying me. That is fear. That is a person leaving a warning behind in case he is no longer around to explain what happened. So let me ask this early. When someone tells friends, if I go missing, look at my partner, do you think people should treat that like serious danger immediately? Or do people ignore it because it sounds too dramatic until it is too late? Because in Stephen's case, the warning did not stay a warning for long. Still, the relationship was not simple. And this is where the public arguments around the case become uncomfortable. A neighbor reportedly described seeing Stephen and Cierra in a physical confrontation outside the apartment complex. That neighbor claimed Stephen had Cierra pinned down in the parking lot and said a belt was involved. That detail matters because it complicates how people talk about the relationship. Some people will hear that and say, maybe Cierra was afraid too. Some will say, maybe both of them were toxic. Some will say, maybe she used their conflicts later to justify what she did. And some will say, whatever happened before, nothing justifies killing a sleeping person and trying to erase his body. That last point is the one the case eventually comes back to. A messy relationship does not justify murder. A bad argument does not justify dismemberment. And even if the relationship had problems on both sides, the person who ended Stephen's life and tried to hide him became the one legally responsible. But before the courtroom, before the sentence, and before the public knew the full horror, there was the apartment. On August 16, 2017, Stephen came home from work. The relationship was already strained. Friends believed he wanted out. Cierra was still living there. And that night, there was reportedly another argument. Then Stephen went to sleep. That detail is haunting because sleep is when a person is most defenseless. Not arguing, not fighting, not running, not threatening. Sleeping. Investigators later said Cierra shot him in the head while he slept. That would have been terrible enough. But the killing was only the beginning of what made this case so disturbing. Because after Stephen was dead, the problem for Cierra was not grief. It was not panic in the way most people imagine panic. It was what to do with his body. And the explanation witnesses later said she gave was one of the coldest parts of the case. Stephen was too heavy to move in one piece. So investigators said she used a machete to cut his body apart. She allegedly wrapped the remains and placed them into dumpsters around the apartment complex and other locations. Just pause on what that really means. This was not a stranger in an alley. This was not someone she met once. This was her live-in boyfriend. A man whose apartment she had moved into. A man who had let her stay. A man who had reportedly been trying to get her out of his life. And after he was killed, investigators said she reduced him to something the trash truck would pick up. That is why this case hits so hard. It is the humiliation after death. The attempt to make a person disappear as if he never mattered. No funeral. No direct call to his mother. No honest confession. No dignity. Just dumpsters. A landfill. And then a missing person report. Because 2 days after Stephen was last seen, Cierra went to the Baytown Police Department and reported him missing. This is the part that should make people angry. She did not just stay silent. She did not just leave town immediately. She created a story. She told police Stephen had left the apartment around 10:30 p.m. to look for his daughter and never returned. She said he was not answering his phone. She pointed out that both of his vehicles were still at the apartment complex. On the surface, that sounds like a worried girlfriend trying to help. But when you place it beside what investigators later said happened, it becomes something much darker. It looks like she was trying to write the first version of the story before anyone else could. If she reported him missing, she could frame herself as concerned. If she told police he left on his own, she could push suspicion away from the apartment. If she pointed out his vehicles were still there, she could make the disappearance look mysterious. And if no one found his remains, maybe people would spend months wondering whether Stephen had run off, gotten into trouble somewhere else, or disappeared for reasons that had nothing to do with her. That is why the missing report feels like a performance of innocence, a performance of concern, a performance that insulted every person who loved Stephen. Because if investigators were right, she was not searching for him. She was hiding what she had done to him. And then the trash system almost helped her. The dumpsters from the apartment complex were collected and taken to the Chambers County landfill. Once trash enters a landfill, it can become nearly impossible to separate one person's garbage from another. Bags are crushed. Debris mixes. Time passes. Weather changes everything. And in this case, Hurricane Harvey was approaching. That storm could have buried the evidence forever. But on August 22nd, before the storm fully swallowed the area in chaos, a landfill worker found human remains. At first, investigators could not immediately say with certainty who the remains belonged to. But the timing was impossible to ignore. Stephen had been missing since August 16th. Cierra had filed a report on August 18th. Now human remains were discovered in the same general waste trail connected to the apartment complex. The story Cierra told was beginning to collapse. And when police wanted to speak with her again, her behavior changed. She had agreed to follow-up interview. Then she did not show up. She stopped answering calls. The worried girlfriend suddenly did not want to talk anymore. And that shift made the case feel even more suspicious. Because if your boyfriend is missing and police are trying to find him, why disappear when they want more answers? Why stop cooperating right when the investigation is getting serious? Why go quiet after human remains are found? Police searched the Briarwood Village apartment on August 24th. The apartment was mostly empty by then. Furniture had been removed, but the apartment still had stories to tell. Investigators found evidence in the bedroom, the bathroom, the kitchen, inside Cierra's Jeep, and neighbors started talking. Some said they had seen her clearing out the apartment in the middle of the night, not casually packing a few things, clearing it out, moving furniture, and she allegedly had help from other men. That detail opens a whole new set of questions. Who helped her move furniture? Did they know Stephen was missing? Did they believe they were helping her leave a bad relationship? Did she tell them some story about Stephen being gone? Did anyone notice something was wrong inside the apartment? Or did people see odd behavior and ignore it because they did not want to get involved? There were also claims that she tried to sell some of Stephen's belongings around the complex. Think about the boldness of that. Your live-in boyfriend is missing. You are the one who reported him missing. Police are asking questions, and neighbors say you are moving items out and try to sell things connected to him. That does not look like a woman frozen in grief. It looks like a woman trying to empty the stage before the truth reaches it. But even after all of that, Cierra made another mistake. She left Texas and went to Louisiana. And once she got there, she allegedly started talking. People close to her later told police she had confessed. One account said she told her best friend the morning after the killing. Another said she told her brother's girlfriend while in Louisiana. And the way witnesses described her alleged explanation was chilling. She supposedly said she had to cut Stephen apart because he was too heavy to carry whole. That is the kind of detail that changes how people see a suspect. Because there is panic, and then there is cold problem solving. There is fear, and then there is disposal. There is a person overwhelmed by a crime, and then there is a person explaining body weight like it is a moving problem. Police later described Cierra's demeanor as uncaring and without remorse. And whether viewers believe every single witness statement exactly as told or not, the larger picture was difficult to escape. Stephen had warned people about her. He ended up dead. She reported him missing. His remains were found in a landfill. His apartment was cleared out. She fled to Louisiana. People close to her said she told them what happened. At some point, the story was no longer just about what happened inside the apartment. It became about what Cierra allegedly did after. Because the cover-up is what reveals the character of the crime. The missing report, the dumpsters, the apartment cleaning, the silence, the running, the alleged confessions. Every step after Stephen's death gave viewers and jurors a different question. Was this panic? Was this calculation? Was this someone trying to survive? Or was this someone trying to make sure Stephen was never found? Around the middle of this story, I want you to answer this seriously. What bothers you more, the killing itself, or the fact that she allegedly reported him missing after trying to throw away the evidence? Because for me, the missing report is one of the coldest parts. It is the moment where the person accused of the crime tries to enter the victim's search as if she belongs with the people looking for him. And that is why the competitor-style angle works here. It is not just girlfriend kills boyfriend. It is, he warned them about her. She allegedly killed him. She threw him into the trash. Then she walked into police and acted like she wanted him found. That is the betrayal. That is the outrage. That is why people comment. Because it feels personal. It feels like she used his disappearance as part of the cover-up. Cierra was arrested in Louisiana on September 14, 2017. The Harris County District Attorney's Office accepted a murder charge. She waived extradition and was returned to Texas. At that point, the public began learning more of the details, and the case horrified Baytown.
We start with that gruesome murder making some national headlines right now. A woman accused of shooting her sleeping boyfriend, then hacking up his body with a machete.
We first broke this story back in August when part of the body was found in a landfill. Now tonight, we're learning new details on how police were able to crack that case. Also, the victim's friend is speaking for the first time, sharing how the accused killer joined the search for him, even crying with his mother.
Well, let's get right to Eyewitness News reporter for this one, Nick Notario, with this story, all new at 10. Nick?
Friends say the innocent girlfriend act went away after the torso was discovered when she left town. This is where it happened, this Baytown apartment complex. It was right inside there where Stephen Coleman was killed, shot in the head, and body so heavy that he was chopped into pieces and thrown in the dumpster. Tonight, his girlfriend is behind bars, a gruesome situation, leaving his friends and family speechless.
I mean, that's some pictures look bad.
Dominique Clark can't help but laugh as he looks through old photos on his phone.
Man, they do skin.
The man being Stephen Coleman, a lifelong friend who moved from Louisiana to Houston with him.
You know, I looked up to him and they admired me in so many ways, and it was just like, yeah. You know, he was older than me, so I got to call him my big brother.
The good times ended a month ago when Coleman went missing. Days later, a torso was found at a Chambers County landfill. A body part police believe is Coleman's.
Inside, man, I'm broken into a million pieces.
The feeling gets worse for Clark. Coleman's girlfriend, Cierra Sutton, is behind bars facing a murder charge. A person who helped look for him after he went missing.
She played the role of an innocent person. She played that role of an innocent person. She played it to the fullest.
Investigators say not only did she know what happened to Coleman, but she used a machete to chop him into pieces before putting him in the trash.
Devil sent, you know. That's the mind of a bad spirit. You know, that's not a normal mind. That's not a mind of God. That's not one of God's children.
Sutton was arrested last week in Louisiana. Police here are going to give an update in the coming days. While Clark waits for justice, he's thinking about the past.
I spent a lot of time up there, from the before he even got the key. You know what I'm saying? I watched him get the key and watched him sign the paper for it. And it was a big joy to him because it was like he accomplished something.
Only the beginning, Clark says, of so many goals Coleman was set to reach.
I thank God every day for even giving me the opportunity to experience a person like that. Because I know I will never meet a person like that ever again.
People who lived near the apartment complex could not believe something like that happened around them. A neighbor who had spoken with Cierra after Stephen vanished said she acted like she knew nothing. He asked her about Stephen, and she seemed surprised that he was even asking. That reaction says a lot. Because if she was innocent, maybe the question would make sense. Your boyfriend is missing, people are asking. But if investigators were right, her surprise may have been something else. Not shocked that Stephen was gone. Shocked that people were already connecting the dots.
On his Facebook page, they're a happy couple. He calls her his ride or die.
They've always been smiles.
Donald Wooten knew them both pretty well. He was their neighbor.
It's still hard to believe, it really is. Because I look at her, she's a young girl, she's pretty in the face, you just don't see it. You don't see it in her.
Investigators said Cierra did not fully confess to police. But they also said she gave information that placed her in the apartment at the time Stephen was killed. The case did not need a clean confession from her mouth. It had the warning from Stephen's friends. the missing person report, the landfill discovery, the apartment evidence, the behavior after the disappearance, the flight to Louisiana, the witness statements from people she allegedly told, and the state built the murder case from there. But there were still questions people argued about. One of them involved Cierra's 10-year-old daughter. Public reporting said the child was in the living room during the relevant period. That detail is disturbing because it means a child may have been inside the home while the worst part of this relationship was unfolding. Not in another city, not far away, in the same home. And yet later discussion around the case raised questions about whether the child was ever formally interviewed and why child endangerment charges were not pursued. Because when a child is anywhere near violence like this, people want to know. What did she hear? What did she see? What was she told afterward? Did adults protect her? Or did the system decide not to push that part of the case? There were also questions about why charges connected to the alleged disposal of Stephen's body were not pursued separately. Some people may say prosecutors kept the case focused because murder was the strongest charge. Others may say that what happened after Stephen died deserved its own punishment. Because for Stephen's family, the dismemberment and disposal were not just evidence. They were a second violation, a second cruelty, a second act of violence against his dignity. In February 2019, Cierra Sutton was convicted of murder. She was sentenced to 45 years in prison. Now, 45 years is not light in ordinary language. That is decades. That is a major sentence. But in a case like this, many people still felt it was not enough. Because Stephen was not only killed, he was hidden. His body was placed into dumpsters. His remains reached a landfill. His girlfriend reported him missing, and his family had to live with all of that. Under parole calculations, Cierra could become eligible after serving part of her sentence. Without parole, her projected release date stretches far into the future. But the possibility of parole still angered people. Because Stephen does not get parole. Stephen does not get to wake up decades later and go back to his music. He does not get to unlock the apartment he was once proud to have. He does not get to tell his own side of what was happening in that relationship. And he does not get to explain whether his warning was based on one incident, many incidents, or something he had seen growing inside Cierra long before anyone else understood. His family was left with grief. His friends were left with guilt. And the public was left with a case that exposed something people do not talk about enough. Men can be victims of domestic violence too. That does not erase the reality that many women are killed by partners every year. But Stephen's case forces people to confront the other side as well. A man can be afraid. A man can be trapped. A man can warn people and still not be believed with the urgency he deserves. A man can be physically stronger and still be vulnerable when he is asleep, when he is manipulated, when a weapon is involved, or when he is living with someone who refuses to let go. And that is the part of Stephen's story that should stay with people. He reportedly wanted out. He reportedly warned friends. And still, he died inside the apartment he let Cierra move into. This was not a random murder. This was intimate, domestic, personal, the kind of crime that starts long before the final act. It starts with arguments people dismiss, warnings people do not know how to handle, friends saying that relationship is toxic, neighbors seeing confrontations and moving on, a partner refusing to leave, another partner trying to end things but still sharing a home. And then one night, everything crosses the line. After Stephen's death, Cierra became the center of a story she had tried to control. She wanted police to believe Stephen left. She wanted people to ask where he went. She wanted the missing person report to create distance between herself and what happened. But the evidence pulled everything back to her. The trash led to the landfill. The landfill led back to the apartment. The apartment led back to Cierra. And Cierra led back to the warnings Stephen had already given. That is the tragic circle of this case. He named her before he vanished. Then she reported him missing. And the truth still came back to her. Stephen Coleman was more than the worst thing done to him. He was more than a headline, more than a landfill discovery, more than a gruesome detail people repeat because it shocks them. He was an artist, a man with a name people knew, a person trying to build a life, a person who deserved to leave a relationship without losing his life. And even if every part of that relationship was messy, even if there were arguments, even if outsiders saw things they did not understand, none of that gave Cierra the right to become judge, jury, executioner, and storyteller. Because that is what the missing report tried to do. It tried to make her the storyteller. It tried to make Stephen the mystery. It tried to make the public look anywhere except inside that apartment. But the truth did not stay buried in the trash. So now I want to hear from you. Do you believe Stephen's warning should have been treated as an emergency before he disappeared? Do you think Cierra's 45-year sentence was enough for the murder and the cover-up? And what part of this case disturbs you most? The warning, the fake missing report, the dumpsters, the child reportedly being present, or the fact that she allegedly acted like she knew nothing? Drop your thoughts in the comments, but keep the focus where it belongs. Stephen did not deserve this. A toxic relationship does not justify murder. A messy past does not justify disposal. And no victim should have to be perfect before people care that they were killed. Subscribe to Crime Scene Exposed for more true stories where love, control, jealousy, and betrayal turn deadly. Rest in peace to Stephen Slim to Don Coleman. He warned them. He vanished. And the woman who reported him missing was the same woman convicted of taking him away.